those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to the Wild Eye Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to pinnacle entertainment savage worlds, aimed at beginners and veterans alike. How are you today, Harrison?
Yes, I'm very good, thanks, Eric. Well, no, actually, you got to be honest. I've been reading a bad book, and that's what this episode's going to be all dedicated to today. Don't make that face. All right, it's good then.
Well, maybe leave people guessing what you thought about it.
All right,
first,
then, to keep it balanced,
for a while.
I've been reading a book. So yeah, this is a bonus episode. We're doing another review, and we're talking about TimeZero by Grammel, and this is a time travel setting for Savage Worlds. So if you ever wanted to do a bit of time travel, then this is either good, bad, or somewhere in the middle. Who knows? Wait to find out.
Suspense. Well, the reason I asked Harrison to review this book was because a while back a listener, Paul Dorrit, asked us to talk about time travel, and it's not something that I've really ventured into or experienced much. So I felt I wasn't ready really to talk about it. And then, so when we were looking for ideas for the next book to review, I thought about that one because, like I was telling Harrison before we started recording, a while back I was watching this show on TV. It's 12 Monkeys, based off the movie, of course. Great movie that I really like. And the show, I mean, maybe the first 3 or 4 episodes were actually good, and after that it got really bad, so I quit watching. But I was like, that it might be fun to actually run a campaign with time travel, make it like a savage 12 Monkeys. So I picked up that book, started reading it, and it seemed like it had a setting, but also that to me it felt like it could be some type of companion or toolkit for time travel. But the shiny syndrome back then, I quickly moved on to another book. I don't think it grabbed my attention all that much. So Harrison, thanks to our patrons, I sent him the book, and he read it. It wasn't that easy apparently for him to read, but we are.
The thing is that it's an interesting subject at the very least, because the thing about it is that a lot of people, as GMs, one of the biggest tips that people say is often never do time travel, and yet Grammel's attempted to do it in this book. I think we should,
because you've done it, right? You've ran some campaigns or games at least with some time travel.
Yeah, I've done 2, and yeah, both of them ended very quickly because players always find a way to exploit it, don't they?
Right.
So
coming back always at the same time period to when someone before they're born to eliminate them.
Yeah,
the whole let's go kill Hitler when he's a baby.
Yeah, or just go to the end of the campaign, see how you finish it, and then just do that.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, but it's certainly, I think it was a bold move to try it with this one, and as I said, it's either good, bad, or somewhere in between. So
let's go between the covers.
Oh yeah! Welcome one and all to Between the Covers, the hottest and most greased up segment on this podcast. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, things are gonna get a bit weird in here. No, it's nothing sexy. Sorry, what? It's kind of where we talk about a Savage Worlds book from cover to cover. Like some sort of book club. Well, essentially, yes. Well, in that case, I'm leaving. Oh yeah. See you later. This book, much like many Savage Worlds settings, starts up with a short story. And it's about two members of the Time Guard trying to stop Christopher Columbus from getting poisoned. It's fairly decent, not terribly written, but not terribly atmospheric either. But it does do a kind of decent job of telling you what sort of adventures you'll be having in TimeZero. To put it simply, you play as members of the Time Guard, which is a secret organisation that fights, as the book puts it, time thieves and chrono terrorists. That's the introduction that the book gives you, and then the first half of the book is the players section, which starts with a section entitled "A Little Future History." This is basically a bit of info on time travel, the Time Guard, and some other stuff. And it basically says the Time Guard was created to prevent changes in history, prevent crimes across the timeline, and gives you their motto, which is, if it is written in the history books, then so it must be. Let's say, for example, some chrono terrorist has travelled using their makeshift time machine and has decided that they wanted Hitler to win World War II, and they've succeeded. Well, you have to go back and fix that. That's sort of your job.
So you're neither really a good guy or a bad guy. You're kind of really neutral. You don't take sides.
Mm-hmm. Which sounds boring, and it is. And in this universe, time travel requires gigantic facilities the size of factories. So only 2 Time Guard mandated machines actually exist. And these are called TimeZero and Time Epsilon. Actually, I think that only TimeZero actually has a machine in it, but it's not that clear in the book. But there's only 2 facilities anyway, and the one that you'll be using is called TimeZero, hence the title. The first one, TimeZero, that base, exists in the Cretaceous period, which seems like a fun place to put a time machine, but it's really, really impractical. Time Guard has this really, really expensive time machine, and they've chosen to put it where dinosaurs are.
Don't they explain that as because of that nobody in that time period, because there's probably no humans, can interfere with their actions, right?
Yeah, they said something along the lines of it's a hard period to time travel to, and so nobody can find them. That was something like that. But it's the thing is, they also mentioned that the time travel machines are really, really expensive and really hard to build. So why would you put it anywhere near a dinosaur?
That can trample it. So okay, so let's slow down a little bit, because if there's only 1 or 2 machines and they're controlled by the Time Guard, what does those chrono terrorists use to time travel?
Good question. This is also part of where the story sort of falls down a bit, and I will get into this because there's 2 types of bad guys, right? And I'm going to get into those in a second. So it really, really does suck, and they suck. They really suck. But I'll just finish explaining about the bases, and then I'll explain that because it really is bad. So the other base, Time Epsilon, it exists in the 45th century, and that was the time that Time Guard was founded, and only the highest ranking people in the organisation ever go there. And the base is under the direct control of the Priors, and those are the people that founded Time Guard. Very little is known about those guys, and no member of the Time Guard has ever met them face to face. Even those fortunate enough to visit Epsilon are only allowed to speak to like the receptionists or the cleaners and things like this. And the Priors never ever leave their time for any reason, and it could be because they're lazy, scared, or both. Nobody knows because they're just mysterious. Now, you asked about the bad guys, right? The exact same goes for the bad guys. They have access to similar technology to the Time Guard, and they can do the exact same things as the Time Guard. Why? Mystery, that's why. Good writing, everyone. I mean, it's just that's the sort of stuff I like. Yeah, it doesn't. No, there's no reason. It's just, it's, don't know. So basically,
It's just there so that people can time travel, but there's no consistent explanation.
yeah. I mean, you had to have bad guys, so there are bad guys. That's about it, really. I mean, the thing about it is yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say about it, really. It's just rubbish. But it's the way I feel about it. I mean, it's not necessarily rubbish, because you can have cool adventures based around that, but you had to have a way for there to be bad guys, and that was it. But those aren't the only bad guys. There are others, and to be honest, they're a little bit cooler. Because there's another one. Those guys are called the Triad, by the way, and they're just mysterious, and they have similar techniques and technology. They could be evil priors, things like this. I mean, I'm sure it's explained somewhere in the book, but it was hard to stay awake. There's another group of people called the Alternates. Those are essentially people from other realities as well. So these guys, they're another type of bad guys. So essentially, the example the book gives are the Aryan Alternates. They're a version of the Nazis who won the Second World War. Yeah, so that's about it, really. Those are the main bad guys. It's like, so you'll have people from alternate timelines and then the Triad. So it's like...
So what I'm getting from this is that you can't do time travel without Nazis.
But
what else is in this book?
Yeah, I mean, there is other stuff. But anyway, so those are the two main types of bad guys. So you've got alternates. So it's like if something's been screwed up on the timeline, then you go fix it, and those are like a bad guy. And then you've got the Triad. But then those are the main ones. But then there's like these people called free dudes or free players, and those are like, let's say for example, someone like outside of the time guard accidentally discovers time travel. For example, some kids with a science club are mucking around with a microwave and discover they can send text messages back into time or something like that. Time guard will come in and shoot them all to death. So that's like another thing. So like if there's unauthorized like time travel going on, time guard come in, shoot them up. I mean, alternatively, you could just go back to that time and destroy all their time travel equipment before they discover it or something like that. But shooting a bunch of kids to death, that's a bit more fun. So yeah, there's that as well. Lastly, there's something called temporal anomalies. Temporal anomalies are basically either, I don't know really what they are, but either time travel creates them or they allow time travel to happen. But a temporal anomaly is basically anything. I know that's a terrible explanation, but it's also terrible in the book. So I'll give you an example, because this will basically more give you an idea as to what one is. It can be, let's say for example, you're in 20th century Rome, and then suddenly someone from another dimension pops in, disrupting history as we know it. It can be an alien, Batman, a giant tub of carnivorous jam, whatever. It's basically written in so the GM can do whatever they want. That's a temporal anomaly. It's like a glitch in time. Yeah, so that's basically what it is. It's just, it could be anything you want that's not supposed to be there in history, and suddenly the time guard has to go in and like deal with it.
So basically, like in fantasy settings, magic,
Yeah.
You're a GM and you don't know what cool thing could happen. You just say, "Oh, magic happens." Right.
Exactly. Then the book goes into a small bit about the inner workings of Time Guard, who you report to, who cleans the toilets, where you pick up missions from, that kind of thing. And then there's a section on how time travel works in this setting. And this is kind of one of the things that a lot of people find appealing about this book, because one of the reasons that a lot of people don't like doing time travel in their games is because, as we said before, players tend to exploit it and use it to break games. And there's a lot of rules in here as to how time travel works. So how it works is this. Time travel takes loads of cash, presumably because of the rent on the gigantic facility and the wages of the people running it, but it also takes a huge amount of energy to run, like stupid loads, like all of the hobs on your oven on at the same time, that amount of energy. But the time machine creates 2 time gates, one at the machine itself and one at a desired location. And every second both of those are open, it costs more and more time and money and energy, right? So that means that the use of time machines is like extremely restrained. You can't just keep those open forever. So as the book puts it, no operative, not even the commander of TimeZero, would ever use the machine just to have a drink in his favourite bar in Manhattan in 1995. Although, through bribery, good rolls, or maybe some forged paperwork, it is possible to make unregistered trips, and there's even a nickname for this, and it's called Spending the Night with Cleopatra. Apparently, it's called that because new operatives always want to go on unauthorized trips and hook up with Cleopatra.
That's what I'd want to do too.
If you've been given a mission, right, what happens is you step through the time gate and then it has to close behind you because they can't keep it open for the whole time you're doing it. So what happens is you organise a rendezvous, and then the mission will be like, let's say for instance they give you 7 days to do the mission. Let's say the mission is you've got to go and slap the Pope in 17th century Rome, right? You go there, they say you've got 7 days to slap the Pope because history demands that you slap the Pope, right? You go there, and then you've got 7 days to do it. You'll go back to the rendezvous, and then the gate will open back up and you go in. If you don't make it, then a team will be sent in to rescue you, and that's basically it. That's how it works. So they open it up for another very short amount of time, and bingo bango, because it costs too much money. That's why you can't just keep it open the whole time and keep it safe. But there's also something called temporal debt. And what this means is when you've been transported to whatever time you've been transported to, time continues to flow. So if you're at Rome for a week, when you get back to TimeZero, a week would have passed in whatever time it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And if additionally you can't exist in the same time twice. So let's say you mess up that mission, and you come back and you just go, oh well, I'll just go and do the mission again. Well, you can't do that because you were already at that time. If you went then and coexisted next to yourself, one of those would cease to exist. You would just die. One of you would die. Simple as.
Or create one of those anomalies, maybe.
Yeah, it could do. But it says in here. I mean, you could put that in if you wanted to GM it, but in the book it says that one of them just ceases to exist. So you would just blip out of existence. And if you were harsh GM, you would probably make it the player, right?
Yeah. Well, or what they should have done is like Siamese evil good twins. There's like Harrison, and he's got 2 heads and like maybe 3 or 4 arms, and one of them is evil and the other one is good.
Well, so if you go to the same time and you're already there and you see yourself in a bar, they just slam together, and suddenly he's got 4 arms, 2 heads, 4 legs, 2 downstairs parts, and they both have to coexist.
Yeah.
See, that would have been better. That would have been more interesting. But no, instead, one of them just pops out of existence. No, there is a chance for you to gain the evil twin hindrance, which can happen. But yeah. So in addition to that, every time an event in history is changed, so if you go back and attempt a mission, you're going to change history in some small way. So the second time you attempt it, or the second time you go back to that time, it costs more energy to try to go back to that same time. So, and the same goes for the bad guys too. So if the bad guys try to attack your guys during a certain time period and they fail, well, coming back again is going to cost them more energy. And the same goes for you. If you keep going back and going back and going back, it costs more energy. And eventually, the higher ups are going to say to you, no, that's too much. It's not worth it. And that's another reason that players need to succeed the first time and can't just keep going, oh, it doesn't matter, we got a time machine, we'll just try again. I mean, it's not.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you like that part? Do you like that rule?
Not at all. I don't think it's very fun.
No.
I think it takes some of the magic out of it being time travel. I mean, it's just basically...
Yeah, but doesn't it prevent players from breaking the game and, like you said, just keep going back and trying, if they fail, they just keep going back?
It does. It does. But then part of it is... Part of the fun of time travel is doing those kind of things. And I think that maybe... it just seems that all of this is put in just... It's more like a sort of setting hopping game rather than a time travel game. That's what it feels like.
Oh, okay.
In the end, it ends up not really feeling like a time travel game to me, because of all these rules and regulations. When you put too many caveats to it, it's like, yeah, I get it, but now the game's unbreakable, but it doesn't necessarily feel like time travel. And there's more reasons to this as well, because, yeah, we'll get into it later on, but there's also more reasons why it doesn't necessarily, to me, feel like time travel. Yeah, but it's kind of crazy. I think it's good. I think I commend the effort they put in to try and make the game not breakable. But it's like, I just think it's not fun. That's all.
Fair enough.
Which is a shame. How about you? What do you think?
Well, I feel at least it makes it so that players can't take advantage or try to break the game. As far as not making it fun, I don't know. I think part of the fun for me is we got one chance to do this and we have to do it right, and then it makes it really dramatic and tense. But if it's like, oh, we can go back next week if we fail, who cares then?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it's sort of costing more energy every time. I think that would need to be, not quantified, but maybe need to have like a kind of central character, like a boss, saying, if you guys mess it up this time, this is the last chance. You have any idea how much energy that cost me or something like this? Because that would be kind of fun, because having a couple of tries maybe and understanding the risks and things like this, I don't know, that would kind of be fun. But yeah,
I think I would change it to something like in 12 Monkeys, where, well, in the TV series anyway, because pretty much every episode he goes on and he time travels again, but I think we get hints of that in the movie too, which is that every time he time travels, his body starts to fall apart. Like it's a time bomb that you can only do it so often. And so maybe a hindrance, I think there's a hindrance in Deadlands, or maybe it's in the Superpowers Companion. It's kind of like Aelin, and at this beginning of every session, you have to roll something, and if you fail, you just die because you're ill. So maybe something like that instead.
See, that would work. And I feel like sometimes part of the fun of time travel is seeing the same things again with prior knowledge. And, I just feel like sucking some of that out is a bit of a shame, It's not necessarily just seeing old and different settings every week. I think that's part of what shows like Doctor Who really make the mistake of doing. But then that's extremely popular, so I don't know, maybe I'll just shut the hell up. But anyway, the next is they give some rules for Time Guard operatives, because if we needed more rules and regulations, there's 3 more. So whenever you go and travel back in time, these are the 3 tenets that you need to remember. Avoid killing locals whenever possible. So you can kill a couple if you want. Next up is don't leave any space age stuff from the 45th century lying around when you time travel. All right. So that vibrating. Well, let's leave it there. Do not leave that lying around. Okay. And the third one is don't tell people that time travel exists. I mean, that should be fairly obvious, but don't do it. Don't you walk up to a caveman and tell him that time travel exists, or a dinosaur, because you have any idea what a raptor would do if it knew time travel existed?
Right. Well, especially, I was thinking more like Da Vinci, that would drive him crazy.
But yeah, next up it goes on to a section about different time periods, and it also gives players like an idea on different archetypes and characters and things like this. It's presented from the perspective of the Watchers, as if they've taken notes on different on each era. Now the Watchers are kind of like these. I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but they're like people that watch different eras to look for bad stuff going on, and then report back, essentially. And they take notes and things like this. So they're essentially like scribes kind of thing. This whole section's like done from the perspective of a watcher, taking notes on each period. So and these parts, even the book says, are not 100% historically accurate. And this is on purpose. It's done this way, favouring fun and the story instead. To give you a few examples, if you were from the Stone Age, you might be a fisherman or a tribal chief. If you were from feudal Japan, you might be a monk or a ronin. Or if you were from the near future, so that's 2070 to the 3800s, you might be an off-world colonist, a spacer, or a synth. With regards to any time further into the future than that, you can't play a character from those times. Why? Because time machines won't allow gates to go into those periods for some reason. You want an explanation to that? Well, get the hell out of here.
There's none.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can't visit the priors.
Well, no, you can, because they exist in 45th century. And you can go to Time Epsilon if you were invited. So, but the thing is that any time after that ain't happening.
Oh. Well, I mean, how many different eras can you visit really in one book? I mean, they can only write so much. They have to stop somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what I would probably put is something along the lines of, maybe, of course, you can go even far into the future than that, but we can't write everything, so use your imagination. But the thing is, what they did is you just open that page and there's just a blank page.
Maybe the universe has ended, and if you go there, you just disappear.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. You just go into space and just explode. Yeah, and then it elaborates on a few of these backgrounds, giving you some more detailed descriptions and some extra ones, such as dandy, artisan, and castaway. But my favourite, and you're going to like this, Eric, my favourite archetype has to be commoner. I really think they knocked out of the park with that one.
So, but those backgrounds, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember reading that when you go on an assignment in a time period, you're given some type of identity, cover identity, right?
Yeah, you are. And the thing about it is the next section is actually character creation, and there's one sort of massive difference, because what happens is character creation is largely the same, but when you go to a time period, you're given a cover identity. Now, this goes down to everything, including your costume. You even get plastic surgery, but there's a new thing called hypno training. So when you pick your skills, edges, things like this, you get some hypno skills and hypno edges. And I'm going to be saying this a lot, so get used to this, because if those are stupid words now, they're really going to be in about 5 minutes' time. When you're going through loads of different time periods all the time and having to pretend to be, say, a prostitute robot from the future one day, then a caveman the next day, well, you couldn't possibly possess all the skill sets needed, right? So what they do is they hypnotically train people using technology. Well, I think it's technology anyway, and they give them the skills needed for whatever time period. So how does this work mechanically within Savage Worlds? Well, you make your character, and then you have like a certain allocation of hypno edges and hypno skills and hypno toad, depending on which rank you are. So at novice, you have 2 hypno skills and 1 hypno edge, and then every time you go on a mission, you can change those. You could just pick a different edge and pick different skills. So you go, let's say for instance they're sending you to medieval England, well, and you think, you know what, I'm usually a sword guy, but for this mission I might need archery, I'm going to change that out for shooting. And then you change it. And now you're either hypnotized or computer programmed, I can't remember, and then it changes that over, and now you know shooting, kind of like the Matrix.
Right.
Actually, kind of cool, I guess, but it does mean your character loses some identity a little bit, but it's actually, well, it's allocated differently to all the ones you know already, so it's kind of cool, and you can change an edge out and go, you know what, that one didn't work last time, computer, give me sweep, because I feel like I need that this time. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like your loadout that you're picking before you go on every mission, and it is actually kind of fun. Starting gear also works kind of differently, because you don't really, well, you're not going to have like a set load of gear, because you're always doing different types of missions. You're going to completely different settings every time you do a mission, so of course your gear is always going to be different. So instead of it having like a regular starting amount of gear, you get, every time you go on a mission, you'll get you're given a disguise, as I mentioned, and the equivalent to $100 for that setting that you're going to. And then you get something called budget points. And depending on your rank, you have access to a certain amount of budget points. 4 for a novice and seasoned, 5 for a veteran and heroic, and 6 for legendary. And you use these to buy all the 45th century equipment that you take with you on missions. So this is like all your gadgets and stuff like this, which we'll talk about a bit later. But additionally, as I said before, this part also mentions that you get plastic surgery when going on missions too. So if you decided what your character looked like at the beginning of the game, well, screw that. They're going to look very different very soon, because you're going through a lot of surgery. You do even 2 missions, well, you're going to look, your face is going to be buck wild. It's going to be all sorts of goofed up.
You're going to look like Cher.
Yeah, pretty much. 5 missions in, you've had so much plastic surgery to look like the different times. You're gonna like share times a million. Because you've had to look like a guy from a medieval period, an alien, a robot. You've had to, you're gonna look crazy down there.
That's nuts, but it makes sense. It's just like you said. You it's like making a new character pretty much every new mission, basically.
Yeah, it's one shot a game.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why I said it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't necessarily feel like to me. It's like Assassin's Creed. Do you know what I mean? It's like in that game, you were always just thrust into this like this like old plot that took place in, oh god, I can't even remember, but it was like place in, like the most recent one was in Egypt or whatever, right? And it was a plot in ancient Egypt, and then you have this future plot that always took place in some like modern day area, and nobody gave a toss about that future plot. Everyone just thought it was kind of dumb, and you always, it was like this thing that was completely unnecessary because you played this faceless stupid goon character, but then the real plots were actually happening when you were going out on missions. And it kind of feels the same here. It's just like, okay, yeah, so you go back to the base, you change all your hypnotoads over, and you get new gear and all of this. What's the point in the TimeZero bit? Why not just do a new mission every week where you roll up a bunch of new characters and do a mission in medieval times, do a mission in feudal Japan, do another sci-fi mission? That's what Savage Worlds is for, right? What's the point?
Yeah, because I mean, when you play a campaign, you want some progression for your character, for maybe some character arcs, some things that happen in your life. But it feels like with this, you're just an agent. You're just a blank template to go from one timeline to another, and then you're a new character every time, basically.
Yeah, you're constantly having to pretend to be someone else anyway, even to the point where it says that it gives you tips in the GM section, which we'll get to later, and it gives you tips in there for how to deal with cover stories every time, and it even suggests, because there are certain groups that are slow with coming up with new identities, to hand them out new identities as if it's like you're doing a one shot. Like, yeah. And like, to me, that's crazy. It's just like, I wouldn't necessarily feel like I had really a character if I was having to have that character pretend to be a different character every week when I turned up at a game, Because the only time where you'd be role-playing your character is in hushed tones when you're hiding from the locals. And I don't know, man. I don't know. But yeah, there's new edges and hindrances in this book. Both of them are. I feel like I'm being overly mean, but both of them are quite boring. But there are some notable examples. The hindrances we'll look at first. Evil twin. It's basically a trapping for the wanted hindrances, but it's an evil twin, so that's pretty cool. There's one. You'll like this, Eric. It's called Naked Traveller. So this is a bit like 12 Monkeys. So whenever you time travel, you actually can't take any gear with you. So usually you get given these disguises, the 45th century weaponry, all of this cool stuff, but for some reason, it doesn't come with you. Your character just can't take it. So you arrive exactly as you are, and you can't take any gear. So you have to find it all on site. Maybe you have to mug a local, take their stuff, get weaponry on site. You couldn't even have a communicator to talk back to base, so you've got to...
Well, you know why this is a lame hindrance?
Go on.
Because you'll be traveling in a group, right? So you can just give your stuff to your buddy next to you, and he'll just bring it with them.
Oh yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, I didn't think of that. Yep. Okay. To be fair though, there is an optional setting rule where you could have everyone has to take this.
Yeah. Then it would make sense. Yeah.
And there's another one which is celebrity. So being famous can get in the way when what you're doing is strictly undercover. And what I thought of is, what if you were playing? What if Time Guard recruited Elvis, and then they were sending him on missions? And let's say, for instance, you have to go to the modern day because Hitler won World War II. Yeah, we're going back there. And then suddenly you're trying to be undercover, pretending to be a Nazi, but you're actually Elvis. And they're like, "Hang on, didn't you die 30 years ago?" And he's like, "No, I didn't die."
Yeah, that'd be funny. But then if you go back in the past, nobody knows who Elvis is,
no,
right?
I'm saying
who cares?
I'm saying it's 30 years later, and the Nazis have...
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know, but that hindrance, if you're a celebrity in 2018 and you go back to,
So
800 BC...
So most of the time, it's not even a very good hindrance either, because like
exactly.
So for the 65 million years that this book spans, 95% of that it doesn't even work. So yeah, rubbish. All right, okay, I've picked out crap ones. All right, I get it. Okay, let's have a look at some edges. Right, you can also tell me I've picked out rubbish ones for these as well. All right, so edges. We got crowd fighting. If you're fighting in a big crowd, you basically get a bonus on your fighting die equal to the amount of aggressors -1. Is that good?
Yeah. I don't know what it has to do with time travel, but it sounds cool.
Yeah. All right, this one's to do with time travel. Total recall. You can change your hypno skills and edges on the fly by spending a penny. You don't actually need to be at the base.
I like that, because what if you picked a loadout that turns out not to be really useful during the mission? Now you need to adapt so you can switch it. Yeah, I like that.
And this one was pretty cool. So this is Message in a Bottle. A future version of you has left notes around the timeline that can help you out with stuff. It can happen once per session. The GM can straight up refuse to reveal anything. This is the kind of bit I don't like, and give you a penny instead, and that's kind of lame. But the actual part of the future version of yourself leaving notes around, although again this is kind of a trapping for danger sense, but nonetheless it is. I still think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I like that too, because that's stuff that you see in movies all the time with time travel. So I like that.
I think it's great, and like getting little hints from your future self and getting about the game. I think it adds flavour, and I think it's spectacular. Next up, we'll have a little natter about gear, because I think the gear is somewhat lacking with some cool elements, but obviously for the old-timey stuff, like depending on where you go, it keeps it really vague. And in fact, for a lot of future stuff too, because, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of... Well, you've got years and years and years of future stuff, so it's all vague. For armor, it just lists the armor value and type. And the way it does this, for example, is light ancient armor adds +1 to toughness. It doesn't say the name of it or what it is, it just gives that brief description. And like heavy modern will add +2 versus melee or +8 versus bullets. That's the way it does it. But it doesn't give the names of it. So you just, let's say for instance, you go to the year 2070 and you go, oh, this is Kraktharian armor, but then you just give them heavy modern. That's what it is.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense having spanned so many time periods. And because, I mean, Savage Worlds is +1, +2, +3. Some armor might be +4, but it always stays within those numbers. So that +1 is like leather, and 2 is chainmail, and 3 is plate mail. So.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference if it's leather from Saturn or raptor leather.
Right.
But yeah, it basically says for all the stuff, like for weapons and all of that stuff, refer to the Savage Worlds core book, because it says it has a decent spread of weapons in there. And Savage Worlds core obviously has a lot of stuff, but if you're going to get specific, you need to put a lot of trappings on weapons, basically. But what is listed is the stuff you can buy at the TimeZero base using the budget points I mentioned earlier. And at this point, I'm going to play a game, Eric. I'm going to list 4 bits of gear from the TimeZero book, and one of them will be made up. You've got to tell me which one is the one I made up.
Okay, let's do this.
First one is the makeup kit. It contains a fake beard, coloured contact lenses, cosmetics, etc. The next one is Morpheus serum. It's basically knockout serum, and the enemy has to roll vigor to not fall asleep. The next one is a pet synth. This is basically like your own personal robot. And the last one is exploding trousers. Which one is the one I made up?
At first I was going to say the makeup kit, but I think probably the exploding trousers.
You are correct. But I should put that in
That was obvious.
I did make that.
Might have made it more fun, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. I mean, because the thing is, if you're in a dire situation, exploding trousers will always get you out. I mean, you won't have any legs anymore, but it's a one-use type of thing. Yeah, there's more. There's way more than this. There's like, and they're all kind of cool. There's like new types of grenades, to chameleon suits, to stealth jets. It's that type of thing. They're not the most creative thing on the planet, but they're all pretty decent. They're all right. That's basically it. So it's like a tiny, not tiny, but like a one-page table of gear. I would have liked to seen a bit more, but they're all pretty decent. So Eric, what's your favourite thing to see in any Savage Worlds setting?
Zombies.
Setting rules. Yes, correct. You're right. Setting rules, and lots of them.
Yes.
Fortunately, this one has 7, but
that's average.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that they're kind of essential to the setting, because and a lot of them are even described in the player's part anyway. And I don't know if you can really even class them as being setting rules, really, but we'll go through them now anyway. So we have hypno training, which we'd already mentioned, and that's a setting rule, and that's not that intrusive anyway. There's also time travel sickness, which is basically like jet lag for time travelers, and both humans and synths can suffer from it. Did I already mention synths? It's like another race that you can play as.
in passing, but not that it was one of the races you could play or something like that.
Oh, so yeah, synths are basically just they're like humans, sort of, but they basically don't suffer from cooled shots to any location, because they're kind of like humans, and they have +2 to recover from shaken, and they're not affected by poison. So I don't know why you'd play anything else.
Are they like clones or something like that, or robots?
Yeah, they're just like they're like humans, except they're just made to be almost exactly like humans. They eat, they look like humans, except they have all these benefits. I don't know why you wouldn't play a synth. The only downside is they don't have a past. That's it.
So they're not born; they're created.
Exactly. So yeah, as I mentioned, that the next rule was time travel sickness. The way it's written is a bit weird, but I think how it works is whenever you go through a time gate, you draw a card and make a vigor roll, and if the card face is black, it adds an additional complication and you suffer a -2 to the vigor roll. Crit fail means you're fatigued and you arrive naked with no gear. Failure means you're fatigued. Success means you're disoriented and you arrive shaken, and a raise means and this is a direct quote from the book, the hero is wholly unaffected by the time trip. It says hero because there's an unnecessary space in there. Don't know if that was intentional or not. Maybe it's because they're travelling through a gate and this is like a time skip. So
well, maybe a time guard came back and removed it from the book. Maybe there's something really important between the and Hero in there that we're missing.
possibly. Then there's new rules for disguises, shadowing, henchmen, polluting the timeline, grades, and promotions. I was going to sort of go into all of them, but it's just there are setting rules for all of those things.
Yeah, it sounds like you said, they're essential to time travel.
They kind of are, because the thing about it is that you're doing a lot of disguising yourself as someone else, sneaking after people, and this is a big organisation, so you need to have new rules for henchmen. And the thing is, as I said, if you're leaving stuff behind in timelines and changing history, then you need to have that stuff there. And the grades and promotions thing, well, you need to have that in there because it's a big organisation with a hierarchy. To me, it's not really... They don't feel like setting rules. To me, it feels more like just like world building and things like this. It's kind of like... Yeah, it's not really setting rules. It's just like sort of window dressing and things like this. So it's cool. They're not that bad, really, at all. But yeah, then there's some pre-made characters, and then we're on to the Game Masters section. Yeah, I don't know about this bit. I mean, I know I pretty much said that about the whole book, but the Game Masters section is a bit odd. The book's quite front-loaded, so a lot of the actual information is in the player's bit. Although there is quite a fair bit in the Game Master's bit. But anyway, it starts off with some tips about running the game, saying the players can either be free players, so it's like the people that accidentally discover time travel, or they can be members of the Time Guard. So considering it spends so much effort telling you that you should be members of the Time Guard and what the Time Guard do, and the Time Guard, all of this stuff, then it says you can be free players if you want, who are basically described in one paragraph at some point. It also says you can vary the level of supernatural stuff you may see and the level of sci-fi equipment however you see fit. I feel like pointing this out is a bit odd because I'm the GM. Of course I can vary it how much I want. That's what an RPG is. Am I being stupid?
Yeah.
Is that a weird thing to think? Do people need to be told that?
Well, it depends, how you started playing role-playing games. Is it your first role-playing game?
Yeah. Okay. Fair point. It's just I don't know. For me, that was it was like stupid advice. That's like saying, you know what, you can bring dice to the game.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, it follows up with some ways to play a campaign in this. For example, like types of campaigns. So it gives some examples such as time hopping, like a Monster of the Week type thing, like going from scenario to scenario, or era guardians, where time guards operate from like a specific era. So let's say you're assigned, okay, you have to guard 2013. For some reason, that year is really important, and if anyone shows up, any time terrorists, you knock them out, right?
Well, that seems like that. With a campaign like that, you have more room for character development. At least you get to keep the same character, the same identity for a while.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the cool thing about that would be, I think, it might just be nice it has a bit more solidarity, and you could just go back every so often to TimeZero, the base, and report back on your findings, get more equipment, and if there's been any developments in new equipment, go back to, as I said, if you're operating in the modern day, go back and use that equipment, and that can be your kind of quote superpower unquote kind of thing, and that actually has a bit of more of a lasting appeal. And as you said, character development. There's another one as well that is kind of cool, Temporal Castaways, which is another type of campaign where you could be lost in a certain time. So let's say you go on a mission that's supposed to be a routine thing. Let's say you're supposed to go back in time because Da Vinci's a free player and he's made a time machine, and you're supposed to stop him. Once you get there, he closes down your gate to get home, and you're stuck there with him. And now you need to find a way home. But you've already destroyed his time machine because that's the mission you were sent there to do. And he won't do it.
Yeah.
That's another one that you could do. Yeah, that's another type of mission. You could be stuck in a certain time and trying to find a way home. Although, the book does kind of say that they have means of rescuing you, so it's kind of dumb. And the final option, and probably the right option, is a mixture of all of these. So you could just do all of them. So you could have a campaign where you could do a good mix. Anyway, the only real notable stuff in here is mostly around how to play the game, in the GM section anyway, and how to run it. It's, as I said, a front-loaded book, so I'm just going to point out a few things in the GM section I found interesting. There's a section on paradoxes. Obviously, with the time travel setting, players can mess up the game really fast and create a paradox within seconds. As the book points out, the heroes might just go to a point where the mission is already finished and ask someone how they finished the mission and then just do that. So here's what the book has to say about time paradoxes. First off, obviously, as we mentioned before, if you spent a week in ancient Rome, a week passes back at the base. Secondly, a player cannot control time directly, ever. Literally ever, no matter what. Even if they have the knowledge time machines skill and roll 10 raises, for some reason the GM has to make sure it doesn't work. Kind of
What
sucks.
do you mean by controlling the timeline? Is it different from changing it?
No, they can't ever use the time machine and control it directly. Then they just can't. They're not allowed. Like the book just says, do not allow them to do that, because otherwise they'll screw up the game.
Well, so what's stopping them from doing that if they're free players?
Yeah, that's also a good point. So it's kind of dumb that the book gives that advice.
Well, I mean, GM could say that it breaks, the machine breaks, or...
Yeah, but then how can they ever use the time machine and actually do missions if they're free players, other than controlling it themselves? Well, I guess you'd have to have an NPC that's the one that made it. That's like your best mate. I don't know.
So it's just trading one organization for another, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. And if they want to play the technician, let's say you're the technician at TimeZero, that's the one that operates the thing, well, you just tell them no. They're not playing a technician, because you cannot let the players ever directly control time. Ever. That's what it says. And also, it says super accurate time travelling is a big no-no. It's got to stay imprecise. As we mentioned earlier, players also can't coexist at the same time as a previous version of themselves. And lastly, there was that thing about it being harder to go back and try the same thing over and over. So, a big part of this book and GMing this setting is about saying no to stuff. And I'm gonna make a joke now, Eric. You're gonna like this. I've said this.
Should I brace myself?
Brace yourself. TimeZero, more like Fun Zero. Hey, there it is. Oh, mansies. One thing I do like from the GM section is there's a big list of peculiarities that can happen when you time travel, and these are kind of like very detailed, and these are like cool things to chuck in whenever you feel like it. I'll give you one example because they're all pretty detailed. So let's say you time travel and you become out of phase. That means the time travelers and their destination didn't sync up right, and if they fail a vigor roll at -2, they become a time ghost. What's the time ghost? Well, it's pretty much the same thing as a regular ghost, except you're only that for 1d6 days, and the only way you can interact with stuff is by using telekinesis. And additionally, anyone that lays eyes on you is completely terrified. Doesn't matter where you are, even if you time travel to after the world's ended and everyone's a ghost. Not happy with that? Can see by your expression you think it's dumb.
A little bit.
What? What's the problem? Ghosts are cool. Look, vampires had their moment with Twilight. Next is ghosts. You wait till I write my ghost romance fanfiction.
Okay.
What follows that is a very, very short and underwhelming bestiary, which is kind of dumb. It's not great. I mean, it's all right. It's fine. It's serviceable. It has. I mean, how could you possibly have a bestiary that lives up to 65 million years? But then you have some adventures. These are so bad, it's unbelievable. They are just. It's basically like a spot the reference type thing. It's just like the first mission. I think it actually is only one adventure. Yeah, it's only one. So the thing is, with the first one, you have to go and meet Charlemagne and get some info off him, and get a sample of his DNA, and then things go wrong along the line because you get attacked by the Triad. That's it. It is one of the worst, most poorly written adventures I've ever seen. And you know what's so disappointing? This is Grammel, man. These are the people that wrote Beasts and Barbarians, one of the best settings on the planet. And whenever you read the flavor text in this book that tries to establish the setting, it's like spot the reference. It's like, I'll just go upstairs and tell our chief scientist Leonardo da Vinci about to fix the light bulb. And it's like stupid things like this, and it's like you've got to go back in time and see this famous face, and it's like when they decided to do a time travel setting, they decided to do it in the most base level possible. Do you know what I mean? And it seems like all the effort went into making this not breakable, and no effort went into making it actually fun. That's how I feel about it. Anyway, I'm really sorry if I offend anyone by this review, but I think this is pure garbage. It's so not worth a buy. I mean, it might just be that it's not my cup of tea. I'm not a big sci-fi kind of dude, but I love sci-fi. I love good sci-fi. This is terrible sci-fi. Sorry. Eric, how about you? What do you think?
Well, I'm underwhelmed by what I'm hearing from you, but like you said, you might be biased because it isn't really your thing. So. And yeah, I'm underwhelmed too because I think that was written by Umberto, right? Pignatelli, probably one of my top 3 favorite Savage Worlds writer.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is. I honestly can't. I don't know. The thing is, I think what it is I can't. I've got to judge it for what it is, and that's just. I'm only seeing what's in front of my eyes. There's no doubt in my mind that this dude's a very, very talented writer. The only trouble I have with it is that I don't think there would have been any way to do this well. It's like as good as this could have been. No, in fact, I don't think it could have been good. I just don't think that this is a product that should exist. I think it might have been a nice idea on paper. But, maybe the drawing board is where this should have stayed. Do you know what I mean? Because once you start elaborating on it, and once you start reading into this, it feels like this is an idea that just doesn't work in an RPG. There's a reason time travel doesn't work, and when you start to have to drill down and then try and alter everything to make it work, it starts being so laden with caveats and rules and things like this that it no longer becomes fun. And yeah, I don't know. It's the very few times it starts to become interesting. It's just like, I don't know. You don't really have a setting on your hands here. You don't really have a toolbox on your hands here. You don't really have an interesting anything on your hands here. You don't really have a setting that encourages building good characters. And I feel like it's not the writer's fault. I feel like it's a fault that the idea is fundamentally not a good idea for RPGs.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, I mean, you just mentioned some here, and that's something I wanted to ask you because, like I said at the beginning of the show, the idea behind getting TimeZero for me was to, mine it for ideas or setting rules or gear to make my own, maybe Savage 12 Monkeys campaign, or maybe just a one shot. So what you're saying is that you can't even find like salvageable material, rules, edges that might be good for such a campaign?
The thing is, the edges, some of the edges they got are really, really cool for a time travel thing. The only trouble is that I feel like this could work if I was doing a short game that would be maybe a couple of sessions. But the only trouble is that because there's so much, there's quite a lot going on. I feel like there's a lot of explanation that would need to be done unless you started in media res. Then let's say, for example, you started the game just having been beamed in to where you needed to go, or you jumped through the gate, I should say. Then maybe, but then it would lose the excitement because you wouldn't have the juxtaposition of being on a sci-fi type base and then going to somewhere that reeks of shit and everyone's having to use handcrafted tools. Do you know what I mean? and you're rocking up with people wearing metal armor and riding horses. You know, that to me is what makes this sort of setting exciting. And the thing is, a lot of these edges and stuff, you know, and hindrances, they revolve around time travel. And if the time travel and that is so laden with caveats and things like this, you're not going to use them. And so, seeing as all this book is so self-contained in the singular thing it's trying to do, I don't think you'll be able to use much of this outside of it. The gear, even, a lot of that revolves around time travel, you know, and that's why it's kind of a tough sell. I don't necessarily think, because it is kind of really a single purpose type book, and that's why I don't think it even really works as a toolbox, because it's I don't know. It's not usable.
It's like the setting and the potential toolkit is just too intertwined together where you can't separate them.
Yeah,
is that what you're trying to say?
Kind of, yeah. Because you could just, if I stripped out the story and all of that, I could just like, let's say for instance, you were just three dudes, and the bad guys were gone, and all of this, and you just used the time travel rules, and you were just three players, right? And you just discovered a time machine, and you were using it, and you as the GM come up with some different threat, and that's it. That's how you want to play it, right? That's fine. The only trouble is that then the way that time travel works in this is so it's got so many different rules and things like this. The figuring it out by yourself would be an impossibility. So you'd need to have kind of a boss character. You'd need to have people that had already experimented with it and things like this, or you need to have some way of learning. So having a setting, an established setting, is kind of a must-have in a way. Not necessarily, but you'd need to do a lot of work. So that's why I think there's an included setting in it. You know, and that's why I think they've done that. And like I said, I do applaud them for trying, because it is a genuine, it's a great effort, but I just don't think it works. And I think there's a reason that time travel doesn't work. And I think that this proves it. Well, because you've got,
what you're saying is say no to time travel in RPGs, basically.
Yes. And I think that this guy, having a very, very talented writer, make something that is not good is a testament to that. And I know, as I say, I apologise if I've hurt anyone's feelings, because it really, really sucks to review something from a company that I think is great and dislike it. But I have to be honest, that's what a review's for, right?
Yeah, that's our credibility, right? So at least when we say that it's good, it's actually good. But when it's bad, it's bad, you know. Unfortunately. Maybe one last thing you can talk about the actual look of the book. Is it illustration, artwork, layout, that type of thing?
Bloody awful. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, that I have to say is really nice. The layout is fantastic. I feel like they achieved exactly what they wanted to. It's exactly what you'd expect from a book about time travel. It's got a really, really nice sci-fi look to it, and all the artwork is spectacular. Cover's kind of cool. It's got like a dude in what looks to be some sort of revolutionary gear. You got a guy in a kilt. You got a sci-fi woman, and then a caveman swinging next to some sort of spaceship. I mean, what more could you want?
That's Savage Worlds, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I like it, man. It's cool. And the layout's spectacular. It's really nice. It's a cool book, man. But the layout. What
about the format? Cool. Is it like the Explorer's
it's the
format?
Correct, it's the correct size. It's the Explorer's format. It fits on the shelf next to it well. So yeah, I'm happy with the size. It's just I wish the innards were the actual words.
All right. Well,
if it was Saga of the Goblin Horde, that'd be all right.
There you have it, for folks. So if you were thinking about picking this up, be warned.
And if you've already picked it up, get in your time machine.
Yeah.
Get Beasts and Barbarians instead, because that's awesome.
No, but I mean, maybe it resonates with other people better, and maybe you can write us and tell us how you use TimeZero to run a campaign and how it worked well for you, because obviously we're kind of suspicious about time travel in RPGs. So
yeah, because the one thing is, I did I did think that maybe I was kind of the wrong audience for this, because I'm not a big sci-fi nerd, but I do love very well executed sci-fi. But you know, Eric, I'm a massive snob about films and stuff. You know, like,
Yep.
and that's one of the troubles and why I don't like a lot of sci-fi, because I'm one of those guys that overanalyzes. Do you know what I mean? And so that's one of the reasons I'm not a big sci-fi dude. But one of my favourite genres of sci-fi is time travel movies. I love it. And that's why I'm so disappointed. So I don't know, maybe if other people have read this and they really got along with it, I'd like to know, and maybe somebody can give me a different perspective on it, and maybe that will help me to like this a bit more, and I'd be interested. So yeah, genuinely, send me in some insights, because I'd like to hear what people think. And if I'm wrong, and if I've made mistakes, tell me, because I'm certain I have, because I'm very drunk.
Still?
Yeah, I know. I know. I've only been drunk once, Eric. It's just the trouble is it's lasted for 28 years.
That's pretty bad. So yeah, maybe one of our listeners, their favorite movie is Time Cop, and they really like that book too. I don't know.
Time Crimes. That's a good movie.
Time Crimes. The Butterfly Effect.
No, that one's stupid.
Time Machine.
Donnie
what else
Darko.
is there out there? Donnie Darko. Yeah, there you go. That was a creepy movie.
And it was a time travel one. It's not exactly sci-fi, but, you know, I don't know, just stick the Star Wars soundtrack on in the background, and you've got a sci-fi movie. Anyway, I think that about does it for this bonus episode. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, and yeah, write to us. Let us know what Harrison did wrong here, what you didn't get.
No, don't tell me that. All right, cheers.
Bye.
The Wild Eye Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respective owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Eye Podcast.